Está causando el coronavirus que está matando al mayor número de personas latinas y afroamericanas que en cualquier otra parte.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law. Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge. Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
In this video, I'm going to talk about how the New World Order is biblical. More specifically, the New World Order of Esau-Edom is biblical and its origin. Beginning with the origins in Genesis 3, where it talks about the serpent. It's not a snake, it's a breed, it's a parable representing a race of people, the evil race, the devil, which means slanderer, and Satan, which means enemy. In Genesis 3, it speaks that the serpent tricked the woman into trying the fruit of the forbidden tree. But all that is a parable where the woman represents the chosen race of God. At that time, they were not called Israelites, but today they are called the Israelites, and the tree represents races, as it says in Mark 8 verse 24, and also in Ezekiel 17 verse 8, where it talks about a sturdy vine. Also in the fourth book of Esdras 5 verse 23, everything talks about races as trees, so the snake represented a group of people. The woman represented another group of people, and trees represented races or groups of people. Also, the fruit they tasted is violating the law of God, and many people think that the law of God did not exist, but God's law did exist according to the fourth book of Esdras 3 from verse 4 to 8, all of chapter 3, but specifically those verses explain how the law of God has always existed since creation, and we are going to read so you can understand. Verse 4, O Lord, who bearest rule, thou spakest at the beginning when thou didst plant the earth, and that thyself alone, and commandedst the people God's law, the commandments when, and gavest a body unto Adam without soul, which was the workmanship of thine hands, and didst breathe into him the breath of life, and he was made living before thee, and thou leadest him into paradise, earth, which thy right hand had planted before ever the earth came forward, and unto him thou gavest commandment to love thy way, or love your commandments, which he transgressed, and immediately thou appointedst death in him and in his generations, of whom came nations, tribes, people, and kindreds out of number, and every people walked after their own will. There is Genesis 6 and 12. Do what you want is the law of the devil, the law of Satanist, and did wonderful things before thee, and despised thy commandments. There it is, the commandments have existed since creation. So as not to make the video very long, the vision of the new world order of the evil race, because that's how it started, with the snake, and after the flood everyone knows about the new world order of the kingdom of Cush, which are the Ethiopians under Nimrod, and the Tower of Babel. That's one of the visions that Esau, that today is the wicked, who is the white race that they admire, but that is not everything. The new world order of Edom, or the Edomites, the white race that dates back to Genesis in the creation, where the white race were the snakes, and for that have to understand reincarnation, and I am going to cover how the Bible talks about reincarnation. Without understanding reincarnation, you do not understand the Bible. So talking here about the new world order of the evil race, the Edomites, the white race, the vision that they have is mentioned in the book of Daniel 11 verse 14. The vision you read in that instant speaks of vision under Antiochus Epiphanes, their vision of the new World order is in 3 parts. First trick. God's chosen. In Genesis, they were not called the Israelites, but they were God's chosen, and after deceiving the chosen control everyone under their law after they violated the law of God under the law of the wicked race that today they are the Edomites, the white race, and after having control of all people. Habakkuk 2 verse 5. The last part of the vision is exterminate the Israelites, and that has a history from Haman the Agagite in the book of Esther. I will cover that later, and of course today with all the atrocities that the Edomites do against the Israelites, killing them in the street like dogs and trying to exterminate them with their jabs, and of course implement your microchip, which is a type of slavery where they mark you as cattle. That everything what is happening right now with the pandemics is the beginning of your slavery, where they cover your mouth. That is something they did to slaves. That all this new world order business is going to fail according to Job 20 verse 23. And many other passages in the Bible that I will go into detail later. All this is going to fail. If you watch my videos, that's a common theme in the Bible, that at the end everything will fail for these Edomites, the white race, and they end up going into slavery and they are going to be exterminated. Not us. Pure demon Edomite spirit, no more body. Just another ghost. Before continuing on, in many of my videos I use the 1569 Spanish Bible, which is the complete Bible including the 4th book of Esdras, which is part of the Old Testament, was part of the Vulgate, was part of the Septuagint, and it is one of the only books where he mentions the Messiah in detail and with name Jesus. In the Biblia del Oso it says, Jesus, that the letter J did not exist in that time. This book was translated in 1569, but his name Jesus is mentioned. That in Hebrew it would be Yahawashai anyway. I'm going to read so you can see what it says. 4 Esdras chapter 7:28, because my son says Jesus or Yahawashai shall be revealed with those that be with him, the apostles, and they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years is talking about the prophecy of Daniel 9. If you watch my video of Daniel 9, the 70 weeks is talking about a day equals a year or 490 years, that in this time that this book was written, more or less 450 before Christ. In his calculation there were about 400 years for the coming of the Messiah. In his calculations he surely thought that the decree of Daniel 9 is the decree of Cyrus, but it was actually the decree of Artaxerxes in his time, in his lifetime. And here he continues talking about the Messiah, and it will happen that after these years from the prophecy of Daniel 9 my son Christ will die the last week. And all men that have life in the world will be turned to silence of old for 7 days, like in the first judgments, flood, until no man shall remain after 7 days. The world age that yet awaketh not shall be raised up, and that shall die that is corrupt. Here in the 7 days is speaking in the last week from Daniel 9. That if you watch my video of Daniel 9 in the last week, clearly end time vision is divided into 2 parts. The first part, which are the first 3 years and a half, is a literal continuation of the 490 years, but the last part, that are the last 3.5 years, is parabolic, separated, a gap, and according to Matthew 24 has 2 meanings or repeats itself. At the end happens once during the fall of Jerusalem from the year 66 until the year 70, which is 3.5 years from Nero to Titus and Vespasian. This is the first time the tribulation happened, 3.5 years, but in that case it was just for the tribe of Judah, the Negroes. And the second part, duplicates to all the tribes. In the end times for 3.5 years, no one knows when this starts and when it ends, but when it begins it is just a period of 3.5 minus 40 days, because the Messiah resurrected and returned for 40 more days. A little bit more than 3 years is going to be a period of tribulation, and in the last 40 days it will be a period of torture, and then the Messiah returns from the start. No one knows the day or hour. There would be 3 years left of tribulation where things get worse every day, and in the last 40 days they will shut down the entire internet communications. No one is going to be able to learn nothing, and after that time the Messiah returns, referred to here in the 4th book of Esdras, where it is precisely speaking of the end-time prophecy from Daniel 9, and he's talking about that after 7 days, which is the last week, all this is over, all this torture ends, the kingdom of Esau, the white race, the new world order, everything ends, and the kingdom of God, which is the kingdom of the Israelites, the Latino, Native Americans and blacks begins. And I wanted to emphasize that point, that the 4th of the book of Esdras is part of the Bible, because as you see, perfectly matches mysteries and prophecies like Daniel 9, which, speaking of Daniel 9 and most of Daniel, really, what I have seen and looked, nobody perfectly understand those prophecies. You learned it here first, the correct Daniel 9 meaning, that many people interpret well until the last week. Some say it already happened in the year 34 or 70 AD, and others give another interpretation, but they don't prove it with facts and with history and with other precepts like Daniel 9:27/4 Esdras 7:30-32, so that mystery among many others were revealed to you here, like this one in 4 Esdras, where he mentions the Messiah by name over 400 years before the coming of the Messiah. The fact that Esdras knew Daniel 9 was an end-time vision, those mysteries nobody knows, not even more advanced groups of Hebrew Israelites or their most studied elders. Nobody knows the mysteries. You are the first to know that mystery, among others, the New World Order or prophecy or the vision of these Edomites of a new world for them is mentioned in the book of Daniel 11 verse 14. It says, "And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south." Egypt is speaking in this case of the Seleucid king that at that time was the king Antiochus the Great, the father of Antiochus Epiphanes. In this part of Daniel 11 is talking about a history where these Macedonians, that the Seleucid kingdom were descendants of Macedonians fighting among themselves against with Ptolemy king of Egypt against other kingdoms of Alexander the Great. And going into this verse 14 is when the Seleucids entered Jerusalem for the first time, and in entering Jerusalem, where the Israelites were mainly Judah, who are the black tribes, when they go in there, they wanted to establish the prophecy, and later it tells you, "And in those times, there shall many stand up against the king of the south," talking about the wars that are known as the Syrian wars. And in this instant of the 5th Syrian war that they were fighting among themselves, then they rose up among themselves, the robbers of thy people Edomites that robbed and dispersed us during slavery shall exalt themselves to establish the vision. This is the vision of the New World Order, but they shall fall. Why is this verse important? Because in this part of history is when the Macedonians under the Seleucid kingdom entered to the land of Israel, and they are there today, by the way, Amalek. And the vision or the prophecy of these Amalekites is to exterminate the Israelites first by making them break the law, that Antiochus the Great failed at it after Antiochus Epiphanes also failed exterminate us completely by forcing us to break the law. That why it says shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall. Daniel 8 and the books of the Maccabees also describes this, but they shall fall, and the vision that they refer to is the vision that they had goes back to Haman the Agagite, Edomite Amalekite. He was a Macedonian who is described in the book of Esther chapter 3 in verse 8, which says, "Haman said to King Ahasuerus, who I repeat wanted exterminate the Israelites," and Haman was an Edomite Amalekite from Macedonia, just like Alexander the Great and the Seleucid Empire. He said Haman King Ahasuerus, that this is a name for Xerxes. The king Xerxes, who is known from the movies. There is a town scattered and divided between the towns in all the provinces of your kingdom, and its laws are different from all other peoples. They are different from all people and do not follow the king's laws, and it is not convenient to let them defy you. If it pleases the king, let it be written that they be destroyed, exterminated. This is the vision of the New World Order, and I will donate 10,000 talents of my silver in the hands of the king's treasures. Then the king took off his ring from his hand. That is how the laws were decreed with the king's ring, and he's going to make a law of exterminating the Israelites who existed at that time in the Middle East. That stayed behind. True Jews are the blacks of today who are here in the American continent. Those are the real Jews, not the who are in Israel right now in Jerusalem. And those who call themselves Jews today, the true Jews, are blacks, descendants from slaves. And he removed his ring from his hand and gave it to Haman son of Amidati Agagite, who is an Amalekite Edomite, that he descended from Macedonia, which also it's in this book Esther 16:10, and said, "And he gave his ring to Haman. He took off his ring from his hand and gave it to Haman the Agagite, enemy of the Jews. And Haman said, the silver given be for you and the people, because you do as you well please." Then they called the king's scribes in the first month, which is March, or in the spring on the 13th day, and it was written according everything Haman said to the king's princes and captains that were over each province, and the princes of every town, every province, according to its writing, and each people according to their language, in the name of King Ahasuerus or Xerxes, was written, signed with the king's ring. And they were sent handwritten letter to the post office from all the king's provinces to destroy and kill and spoil all the Jews, the blacks at that time of all 12 tribes, these Amalekites, Agagites, that today the world elite are Amalekite, who are mainly Jewish Agagite Jews, who are the elite of the elite, the Agagite, and they think of destroying out of all the tribes to the true Jews, who are the blacks, especially spoil all the Jews, all blacks, from boy to old man, children and women, in one day on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is February, what is the month of Adar, as you see Esau's New World Order. That these Amalekite Agagite in the time of Queen Esther, in the time of the Persians, his vision of a new world order was to take control, because Haman wanted to take control of the Persian kingdom and after the world, and exterminate Israelites. That's the ultimate goal of them, as we just read here, till this day act nice, then destroy blacks and Latinos. When these Seleucid got where the real Jews were in Jerusalem, they wanted to establish this vision or this prophecy of exterminating Israelites, is what Daniel 11 verse 14 means. And today the New World Order continues, and there are laws similar to the one Haman tricked the King Xerxes to decree Rex 84 found in the Library of the Congress of the USA, and I will leave here an Edomite a devil from his own mouth tell you, so you can see that this vision, this New World Order of exterminating the real Israelites who are Latino blacks and Native Americans still exists to this day and day, and the funny thing about Haman the Agagite was the one that started the Macedonian idea. To exterminate the Israelites is that Haman, Macedonians in general, they used a logo that is a Macedonia swastika that today is used by Microsoft Windows, founded by Bill Gates, who has the same goal as Haman the Agagite. Could it be that Haman the Agagite is Bill Gates reincarnated?
Rex Bravo. Rex, the Latin name for king. The second contingency in a series of contingencies, the first one being named King Alfred. King Alfred has been revitalized. I don't want to get into big details, but the Rodney King situation has caused it to be revitalized. The American Indian, Americans, the American black, the American Hispanic, has constantly been put in the position of a struggling people with the government that they have in power right now. Without going into great details, King Alfred planned, Rex Bravo being the successor, King Alfred called for the immediate encampment through a series of incidents to take place for all black Americans. Hispanic was to take place second. Now,
as you just heard and saw from a devil, the goal of the New World Order is to exterminate Latinos/Hispanics, blacks, and Native Americans. One of the ways they want to do it is by slandering us of being a virus carrier or carrier of a contagion that is one straight out of Planet of the Apes. The second is to link Latinos, blacks, and Native Americans with terrorism when historically white people are the real terrorist. Coming up, I will show you how they use so-called pandemics, real or not. It turns out, what do you know, what a coincidence that Israelites, Latinos, and blacks are the most infected by the pandemic or carry the virus, which is total bullshit. Anyway, hey race, the slander.
Por grupos sociales, los afroamericanos son los que se llevan la peor parte, con más afectados en ciudades como Filadelfia o Detroit y en otros estados. Y precisamente en Nueva York sigue siendo el lugar de Estados Unidos donde más muertes está causando el coronavirus, que está matando al mayor número de personas latinas y afroamericanas que en cualquier otra parte. María Vargas Pion tiene estos y otros datos que ha dado hoy mismo.
Muchos estadounidenses negros tenemos un mayor riesgo de COVID.
Probabilidades similares tienen los casi 60 millones de latinos que, según cifras del Centro de Investigación Pew, viven en Estados Unidos.
Así que el coronavirus golpea duro, pero en Nueva York golpea más duro a los latinos.
Es que la pandemia del coronavirus, en donde está haciendo mayores estragos, es entre las minorías.
Uno de los portavoces del gobierno de Estados Unidos sobre temas de salud pública confirmó que muchos estadounidenses negros están en mayor riesgo ante el COVID-19. La población afroamericana en el país representa solo el 30% en una ciudad de 2.7 millones de habitantes. Sin embargo, también son el 72% de fallecidos a causa del coronavirus.
Los latinos en Estados Unidos sufren en primera línea el COVID-19.
Empezamos con América Latina, la región que registra más casos diarios del coronavirus que Estados Unidos y Europa y que sufre pérdidas económicas históricas.
Like Psalms 37 verse 12 says the wicked plot against us, also Psalms 31 verse 13, Psalms 50 verse 20, also Ecclesiasticus 26 verse 5, always setting snares and traps, slandering. They also use something called predictive programming. Basically they prophesy a sinister prophecy on the left hand, like Job 23 verse 9 says God works on the right hand and works with the left hand. Sometimes they prophesy in their movies and programs, and we'll show you examples of different clips and how they predict or plan these pandemics, blackouts, martial law, and all that they prophesy with something called predictive programming. Like Matthew 13:16 says, he who has eyes to see, let him see, he who has ears, let him hear. And if you notice specifically in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the movie starts with a pandemic, exactly what's happening now. It is all orchestrated. Cheap magic, just like everything happening now is orchestrated in that movie. The apes are the Israelites, we are the apes, blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. Now that you know that, you will understand the movie magic, and here they are.
19 muertos, cientos de infectados y se extiende como fuego. Hay que aislar a los enfermos. Aislarlos de verdad, hay que meter a los demás a sus casas y evitar que salgan de ahí. Eso hacemos.
No salga de casa.
Yo diría que hay un 95% de probabilidades de que salió de un laboratorio.
Que el virus se originó en pruebas realizadas en los laboratorios Gensis en San Francisco.
El técnico del laboratorio, que ahora se conoce como el paciente Vector, se expuso accidentalmente al retrovirus ALZ-113, un fármaco contra el Alzheimer que se probaba en chimpancés.
Los chimpancés mostraron señales de conducta errática y agresiva, lo cual condujo a su escape de las instalaciones.
El famoso incidente en el puente Golden Gate, un enfrentamiento de 6 horas con la policía, terminó cuando los simios desaparecieron en el bosque Muir.
Las salas de urgencias están saturadas de pacientes que presentan síntomas de lo que se conoce como la gripe de los simios.
El Centro de Control de Enfermedades predice hasta 5 millones de muertes y hasta 150 millones en los próximos 8 meses.
Cualquiera que presente síntomas de una enfermedad contagiosa recibirá tratamiento especial aquí, en el centro de cuarentena del aeropuerto.
Muchos de los recién llegados son niños que perdieron contacto con sus padres.
Las cuarentenas obligatorias están causando mucha inquietud. Las familias se están separando.
Contenerlo es poco probable.
Preparen a sus familias, conozcan las rutas de evacuación.
Nadie conoce las consecuencias de este
aproximadamente 1 en 500.
Hoy estalló la violencia en el centro de la ciudad.
Se declaró la ley marcial en 28 naciones, incluyendo Estados Unidos y Canadá.
El reactor se sobrecalienta, no podemos contenerlo. Solo queremos saber dónde está el gobierno.
Ha ocurrido un completo colapso de la estructura civil.
Debido a la gravedad de la crisis de la gripe de los simios, todas las funciones gubernamentales normales se suspendieron indefinidamente.
Aquellos que no mueran por el virus seguramente morirán luchando. Así que tal vez llegó el momento. Así termina todo. Muy pronto no quedará nadie.
Vivíamos en un mundo eléctrico. Todo dependía de la electricidad. Y de repente se fue. Todo dejó de funcionar y no estábamos preparados. El miedo y la confusión dieron paso al pánico. Los más afortunados escaparon de las ciudades. Cayeron los gobiernos. Las milicias tomaron el poder controlando los alimentos y acaparando las armas. Seguimos sin saber la causa del apagón.
Los ambientalistas tratan de determinar la causa de la muerte.
Con una alerta de nivel 6, la Organización Mundial de la Salud recomienda a los gobiernos...
Amo tus calcetines, son lindos.
He visto casos similares de gente portándose de manera extraña.
Es probable que la Agencia de Salud de la ONU no aconseje alguna restricción oficial para viajar.
La verdad, me parece que es un poco fastidioso.
No son ingenieros. ¿Creen que se desvanecerá solo? Viven en un universo paralelo fantástico.
La hormiga estaba encima del hombre golpeándolo. El hombre está sangrando.
Ya son 21 casos confirmados.
Lo que han dicho del día del juicio final es un completo engaño.
El sujeto le oprimió y siguió atacando violentamente a la víctima.
Se estima que hay unos 15.000 en el Reino Unido y eso es considerado inaceptable.
En efecto, se está esparciendo el ritmo de cambio. Pero hasta ahora no hay ninguna evidencia de ello.
To understand the dooms. Day that's coming to the 12 tribes, the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans at the hand of the devil, the white race. The judgment that's coming to the 2/3 of Israel mentioned in Zechariah 13:8, and also the judgment that's coming to the devil himself, slavery, and at the end, the extermination of Esau. To understand that, you have to understand reincarnation. And I will now cover reincarnation in the Bible that speaks salvation in the end times, 4 Esdras 9:9. Then shall they be in pitiful case, which now have abused my ways. And they that have cast them away despitefully shall dwell in torments, for such as in their life have received benefits and have not known me, and they that have loathed my law, while they had yet liberty, and when as yet place of repentance was open unto them, understood not, but despised it. The same must know it after death by pain, that is to say, that while they lived happily breaking the law of God, they will get punished according to this verse after they die in the reincarnation. 4th Esdras 14 verse 35. For after death shall the judgment come, when we shall live again or reincarnate, and then shall the names of the righteous be manifest, and the works of the ungodly shall be declared. Speaking of reincarnation, all those blacks and Hispanics that are being killed by Edomite cops is the judgment for sins they committed in another life or in this life that they never paid for. Perfect illustration of reincarnation in the Bible. Another example of reincarnation in the Bible is Isaiah 14:21. In this case, it is talking about reincarnation of the devil, the wicked Edom, the white race, and it reads Isaiah 14 verse 21, prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. Another example of reincarnation is John 8 verse 44. You are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar, And the father of it, talking about the Edomites at that time, the Romans, talking to the blacks or Jews, telling them you are like your daddy the Roman and you want to do as the Romans. And the murderer from the beginning is talking about Cain. The seed of the serpent was in Cain, then they were reincarnated in Esau, Edom, who today are the white races. Generally speaking, at the time of the apostles, they were talking about the white Romans. Other examples of reincarnation are found in the book of Daniel chapter 12 verse 12, where Yahweh tells Daniel he would return in the end times to prophecy. And how can that be if reincarnation does not exist? And also Revelation chapter 10. In verse 11, the Lord tells John the Revelator that he would also return in the end times to prophecy. Same thing, how can that be without reincarnation? Reincarnation is also in the book of Matthew 11:14, where the Messiah says Elijah came back as John the Baptist, and Elijah's return was prophesied in the book of Malachi 4 verse 5, now to cover Jacob's trouble and what awaits us. Should we fear? According to the fourth book of Esdras chapter 6 verse 15, we should not fear. It's God's will, and it reads, and therefore when it speaketh, be not afraid, for the word is of the end, and the foundation of the earth is understood. Jacob's trouble is not new. It happened during the time of the Maccabees, during the time of the Romans, during slavery and European/Edomite colonization and conquest, but this time, according to Daniel 12 verse 1, it will be worse than that, and torture awaits the wicked 2/3 of Israelites, blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, a type of torture similar to what happened during the Maccabees. And I will give you an example. An old man at the time of the Maccabees, when Antiochus Epiphanes took over Jerusalem, he tried to force the Israelite to break God's law. As I said, this is one of their goals of the New World Order, to make us violate the law to justify murdering us. And it reads second book of Maccabees chapter 6 verse 25, and so they through mine hypocrisy and desire to live a little time and a moment longer should be deceived by me, and I get a stain to mine old age and make it abominable. Speaking of the old black Jew living in Greece, they told him to fake eating pig so the Jews can eat pig also, and the Negro Jews leave the law of God. He said, no, just kill me. At my old age, I'm not faking anything, stain my reputation. And so it was. For though for the present time I should be delivered from the punishment of men, the Greek Macedonian Amalekites at the time, yet should I not escape the hand of the Almighty, neither alive nor dead. Wherefore now, manfully changing this life, I will shew myself such an one as mine age requireth, and leave a notable example to such as be young to die willingly and courageously for the honorable and holy laws. And when he had said these words, immediately he went to the torment. Then they tortured and killed him. You can read how they would cut them to pieces. Little by little they would cut the hands, the tongue, the ears, pull out the nails. It was terrible. 2 Peter 2 verse 4. For if God spared not the angels that sinned, speaking of Israelites that sinned the 2/3, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment, speaking of Israelites that die in these end times. He never forgave them and delivered them into chains of darkness, because they will never learn the truth, because if they did, they would have to be saved. Hosea 4 verse 6 speaks of the Israelites that will not wake up in the end times and will not learn how they will die for not having wisdom and being ignorant. And it reads, my people die, are killed by white people, for lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget thy children. Ecclesiasticus or Sirach 9 verse 13. Keep thee far from the man that hath power to kill. The man that has the power to kill is Esau, Edom, the white race. So shalt thou not doubt the fear of death, and if thou come unto him, make no fault lest he take away thy life. Presently remember that thou goest in the midst of snares, traps from the Edomites till this day. Speed traps, fake pandemics, fake insurrections, things of the sort, and that thou walkest upon the battlements of the city. In John 19 verse 10, it gives you an example of who has the power to kill, mentioned in Sirach 9:13, who are the wicked Edomites. And it reads, then saith Pilate unto him, speakest thou not unto me? Knowest thou not that I have power to crucify thee and have power to release thee? Perfect example how Esau, Edom at that time, white Romans, have the power to kill like police today, people that govern the world, Edom. The book of Ecclesiastes 12 verse 3 says that there will be an economic collapse, and it reads, in that day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease, meaning employment. Where it says grinders, it is figure of speech, meaning work, and the grinders cease because they are few. Recently, with social distancing laws, many lost their jobs throughout the world, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, because you can't even leave your house, and the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low employment, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Proverbs 1 verse 25 describes the calamity and tribulations that awaits the wicked Israelites that did not learn the truth, the 2/3, 66%, and it reads, "But ye have set at naught all my counsel, and would none of my reproof, I also will laugh at your calamity. When your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you, then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me, for that they hated knowledge, and did not choose the fear of the Lord Yahweh. They would none of my counsel, they despised all my reproof. Therefore shall they eat of the fruit of their own way, and be filled with their own devices." Ezekiel 5. Verse 8-10. Speaking to the wicked blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. "Therefore thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I, even I, am against thee, and will execute judgments in the midst of thee in the sight of the nations," happening now. Blacks and Hispanics getting killed in the eyes of other races, "and I will do in thee that which I have not done, and whereunto I will not do any more the like, because of all thine abominations. Therefore the fathers shall eat the sons in the midst of thee, and the sons shall eat their fathers. And I will execute judgments in thee, and the whole remnant of thee will I scatter into all the winds." This happened during the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD to the Jews. The city of Jerusalem was a walled city. People could not leave. They ate. Their children could not go buy food. But like Matthew 24 states, this happens again in the end times. And as you can see, if they close grocery stores for 2 weeks, people will have to eat each other. Fourth book of Esdras chapter 16 says this about the end in verse 17. "Woe is me! Woe is me! Who will deliver me in those days?" That is Esdras asking who will save him in these troubles that he saw his reincarnation. The beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death, the beginning of wars, and the powers shall stand in fear, the beginning of evils. What shall I do when these evils shall come? Behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment, but for all these things they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of the scourges, the 2/3 of Israel that will be put to death in these last days. For their sins, even with all the chaos going on now, they will not learn." And it reads, "Behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon earth," speaking of food prices and goods, "and other needs. Now they are cheap, or were cheap. Inflation is setting in." And it reads, "That they shall think themselves to be in good case." So it seems because things are cheap. "And even then shall evils grow upon earth, sword, famine, and great confusion, hunger, and protest," happening now. "For many of them that dwell upon earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. And the dead shall be cast out as dung, and there shall be no man to comfort them, for the earth shall be wasted, and the cities shall be cast down." Revelation 11. "And there was given me a reed like unto a rod vand. The angel stood, saying, Rise, and measure the temple of God, and the altar and them that worship therein." That is Yahweh telling John the Divine that in his reincarnation in the end times to measure how many Israelites are awake. That is what it means, in a parabolic form. "But the court which is without the temple leave out, being Jerusalem parabolic, for 70 AD Israelites put to death. And measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. And the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months." That is 3.5 years. That refers to the prophecy of Daniel 9 and 70 AD from 66 to 70 AD. 3.5 years. 3.5 represents judgment and destruction. Those are the 42 months, exactly 3 years and a half. That is to say, verse 2 refers to Daniel chapter 9, the last half week, the last 3.5 years after the death of Yahweh happened during the time of the fall of Jerusalem from 66 to 70 AD. That's verse 2, and it mentions 42 months. That is 3.5 years. Exactly, and 3.5 represents judgment and destruction. Nugget. In the next verse, it also refers to Daniel 9, the last week, the last 3.5 years, but the second occurrence in the end times during Jacob's trouble, that it may have already started minus 40 days, because Yahweh taught for 40 days in person, and the rest is taught through the Holy Spirit by the prophets in the reincarnation. And it reads, "And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, the 2 kingdoms of Israel, the Latino/Native Americans, and the blacks, and I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth." Like I said, 3.5 years minus 40 more or less days. In John 9 verse 4 goes into more detail about teaching in the end times, implies reincarnation. "I must work the works of him that sent me. While it is day, the night cometh, when no man can work." Speaking of this time when they shut down the internet, social media, YouTube, it is called famine of the word of Yahweh. Amos 8 speaks about this. Amos 8 verse 11 Behold, the days come, saith the Lord God, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of the Lord Yahweh. What attitude should we have knowing that Jacob's trouble is coming? In Micah 7 verse 9 says, I will bear the indignation of the Lord Yahweh because I have sinned against him until he plead my cause and execute judgment for me. He will bring me forth to the light, and I shall behold his righteousness. In other words, suck it up and pay for your sins. Bear the indignation and learn the truth and see the light and be saved. Micah 4 verse 10 speaks of salvation among many other passages, and it reads, Be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail. For now shalt thou go forth out of the city, Jerusalem, and thou shalt dwell in the field, West Africa, southern kingdom only, and thou shalt go even to Babylon, all tribes. There shalt thou be delivered. There the Lord shall redeem thee from the hand of thine enemies. The white race, verse 13, Arise and thresh, O daughter of Zion. At the end he will rise us up with power, for I will make thine horn iron. Horn means power, and I will make thy hoofs brass, and thou shalt beat in pieces many people. And I will consecrate their gain unto the Lord Yahweh, and their substance unto the Lord of the whole earth. Fourth book of Esdras chapter 7 verse 43 speaks of the doomsday, the day of judgment. It reads, But the day of doom shall be the end of this time, the end of an age, the end of Esau's kingdom, the white race, and the beginning of the immortality to come for the Israelites, blacks, Latinos, Native Americans. Wherein corruption is past, that is the good news. It's doomsday, but it's the end of corruption, the end of an age, the end of the Edomites, the end of the new world order. Intemperance is at an end. Infidelity is cut off because there will be no infidel or non-believers. It's obvious the Bible is real, righteousness is grown, and truth is sprung up. 4th Esdras chapter 14 verses 40 to 47 says to drink the living water of knowledge and truth and understanding, and in verse 47 tells you to learn the truth, for in them is the spring of understanding, the fountain of wisdom, and the stream of knowledge. In verse 40 it reads, And I took it, and drank, and when I had drunk of it, my heart uttered understanding, and wisdom grew in my breast, for my spirit strengthened my memory. That is to say, pick up your spirits in remembering the truth, albeit bitter at times, is the reality of things. And remember, at the end the new world order will fail, and at the end they will be judged and will be exterminated, as you can see in most of my videos. James 2 verse 13 reads, For he shall have judgment without mercy that hath shewed no mercy, and mercy rejoiceth against judgment. In Amos 1 verse 11, it tells you what race showed no mercy for the sons of God, the Israelites, who are the blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, and it reads, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Edom, the white race, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword. Esau is Jacob's brother, and did cast off all pity or mercy, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. Jeremiah 49 verse 10 reads, But I have made Esau bare, I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren, and his neighbors, and he is not. Third book of Esdras chapter 4 verse 38 reads, As for the truth, it endureth and is always strong. It liveth and conquereth for evermore. With her there is no accepting of persons or rewards, but she doeth the things that are just, and refraineth from all unjust and wicked things, and all men do well like of her works. Neither in her judgment is any unrighteousness, and she is the strength, kingdom, power, and majesty of all ages. Blessed be the God of truth, Yahweh Barak Atha Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai.